Welcome. I'd like to invite OSU Police Department Chaplain John Dickey to come up for the opening prayer. And before he starts, I would like to point out that there are waters and Gatorades right back here. If you find yourself thirsty or hot, please help yourself to those.
You bow with me if you like. Almighty God, we acknowledge you today, and Father, as we come today to remember the life of Officer Daniel. Father, I just ask that his parents, loved ones are here, that I know this would stir up memories. And I pray this time would be an honoring time for him, that it would be a reminder for all of us of what is important. And Lord, I just pray that you'd be blessed and you'd be honored today. It's in Christ's name I pray.
On a personal note, I grew up in a law enforcement family, and I saw the sacrifice and the commitment and the duty, the joy and the pain that you all experience, and I want to thank everybody who's here who serves and your families for your service. Brent Daniel, badge number 13, was born August 18th, 1967. He grew up in Tulsa and graduated from Union High School in 1985. Received his associates from Tulsa Junior College. Worked for a security force before transferring to the OSU Police Department. He joined the OSU Police Department on July 16, 1990, with since retired Chief Everett Eaton. He was a practical jokester, happy spirit, and a joy to be around. He had to always look sharp, and his vehicle had to be clean, both his personal and professional vehicles. Had a general desire to serve the community. Received a letter of commendation on February 28, 1992 for his dedication to teaching self-defense. He received great performance reviews by then Sergeant Glenn Anthony, and I believe Glenn Anthony's family is in attendance today. The collision occurred on May 14, 1992 at approximately 10:30 p.m. by a drunk driver. The impetus for this memorial was spurred by retired OSU Police Department Chief David Altman. He had a basic idea and left it in the hands of the department to ensure that Brent will never be forgotten. This time I'd like to welcome to the podium Oklahoma State University Police Chief Leon Jones.
Great turnout. I want to thank everyone for attending this dedication in honor of Brent. Give a special thanks to Brent's family, his mom Paula, his brother Brian and family, and Shelly and her family. Shelly was a victim of the crash because she was with Brent that night that it happened. I'd also like to thank Brian Brinker, guys at Lake Carl Blackwell and OSU for dedicating this spot and fixing it up proper so people can stop by and be safe while they check out the memorial. Also like to thank Susan Henry for putting in a lot of work raising funds to make this happen. 27 years there was always a marker that stood here in this location in memory of Brent. About 4 years ago, Chief Altman, he approached me and said we should do more. So he never talked about the events of that evening back in 1992. But he often talked about Brent, and he said that he was a very special person. So he had made up his mind that he wanted to replace the existing marker that was here with a more permanent one that would stand for many, many more years. He assigned that task to Leah Storm, and she hit the ground running. She did all the research. She got all the permissions from the university. She called family members, friends, and co-workers. She enlisted the help of Smokey Solace, and together they made a video in memory of Brent. You guys did an outstanding job putting this together, and everybody that was involved in helping. I had the opportunity to meet Brent before I started with the OSU Police Department. When I first met him, I just tell he was just a great guy. He always carried a smile. Somewhere behind that smile, I could tell he was a prankster. He liked to have fun, but it was always a genuine smile that let me know that he loved life. He always was sharp, very professional, and I just knew he touched a lot of lives. And it's amazing that he's still doing so, even though he's no longer with us. After I joined the police department, several years later, I met Shelly. Me and Shelly forged a friendship that will last forever. I got great respect for Shelly. She shared her stories and her struggles on her road to recovery. You are a survivor, and I love you. We all do. The OSU Police Department has always been dedicated to alcohol education and safety and the enforcement of DUIs. But our efforts was greatly enhanced the night we lost one of our own to a DUI crash. Chief Everett Eaton, a week after the crash, retired badge number 13, so it will always remain Brent's badge. We will always remain dedicated in enforcing the laws for DUIs and educating the people. We hope that this memorial serves two purposes. One is to keep the memory of Brent alive so he can continue to touch many lives. And two, every time people drive by and they see this, it lets them know the dangers of drunk driving and the lasting effect that DUI crashes have on victims, families, and friends. Thank you very much.
This time, Chief Jones, I believe, will unveil the memorial. Together with Steve Burrows. We have some guest speakers. Rather than come up in between each one, I'm going to introduce them at the beginning. We're going to hear from Brian Daniel, Brent's brother. Also Shelley Manley, is it Whiting? Should have known that before. Also OHP Trooper Steve Burrows, and I don't know which one of them is going to speak first. I think they're going to fight that out. So let me introduce Brian Daniel.
Well, that's going to be a tough act to follow. To come up at such a time, I just want to be sure and thank every person that's here for the dedication that you've shown on behalf of my family and just the amount of time that's passed. It's been 27 years, and it's humbling for me to sit amongst you, to hear some stories that I didn't even know at that time. And if it's okay, I'd like to share a couple of thoughts. I want you to know that in those 27 years, there's been significant changes, of course. The loss of a brother, the loss of a grandfather and grandmother, my father, and my aunt. So on behalf of us, thank you for what you've done. But at the same time, as I reflected on all the hard work, and I have to say, Lee Storm, just thank you so much. And Chief Jones, thank you for your staff, for your dedication. Level of professionalism is just commendable. But when they asked if I would talk for a second, I thought a lot about it, and I thought, what do I have in common with the majority of the folks that are here today? And there's really three things. There's going to be a small group, and it gets smaller and smaller, those who knew him. Some of you share that, some of you don't. Some of you may only know him through the remnants that used to sit here. I was sharing with someone, and I apologize, I'm trying to keep everybody's name straight. Maybe you just saw a wooden cross and never really knew what the backstory was. And there'll be people that come by and they're not really going to understand what that meant or the impact that it had. And then lastly, there's going to be people that have no idea. They're just passersby, right? But I think the other thing that we have in common, and I'm not the artist that made the cross, I had some input, but outside of that, that's a little more than what I've done. So when I look at the cross, what I think about is a couple of things. On the right-hand side of the cross is a hero. On the left-hand side of the cross, it could be a victim. In the middle of the cross, that's where the true plumb bob of life is. When I look at the shield that sits atop that, the law is what holds us to the standard that we have. And it's the choices that we make in our lives that are either going to make us a hero or make us a victim. So when I think about a victim, and I want to be 100% clear, I'm in no way saying that my brother was a hero. I can definitely say he was a victim, but it's a point of commonality that we all have. The definition of a hero is a person who's admired or idealized for courage and outstanding achievements, or has noble qualities. And I'd like to think that when you reflect today, each and every one of you share a noble quality in the choice of profession that you've chosen, in the way that you raise your family, in the way that you would be willing to invest in a cause greater than yourself. And that's a choice that a hero makes. A victim is a person who's harmed, injured, or killed as a result of a crime, an accident, or some other action. The synonym to that is they suffered. I can say that my family suffered. I can say that my children have suffered. I have a wife and 3 daughters. My wife knew my brother. My kids know the remnants of my brother, but that's all they'll ever know. But I also think that each one of you, in the stories that you've shared with me, we're victims as well. And to Chief Jones' point, we're victims of a choice that a person made. I've made wrong choices in my life as well. And someone that makes a choice to drink and drive has the risk that they can create a lot of victims. So I'm here to celebrate this. My family's here to celebrate this. And again, this is not a day of sadness for us. It's a day of complete and utter pride and thankfulness. And my hope is that when people come and they see this, that they're going to recognize that there's an authority over their life, and that a choice that they make, even if it causes them to pause for 1 second, could make a profound difference. So thank you on behalf of my family. Thank you to everyone that's invested in this, and I appreciate your service. Thank you. So I will introduce Shelly Manley Whiting. Sorry. I know you're going to cry, and I'm saving that for the end. And I'm kind of a crier too, so I'm proud of myself right now. But Shelly, I have known Shelly forever. I was going to introduce her, and Oh, I was going to tell 2 quick stories. Stay up here with me.
Okay.
So my brother, I thought about what could I tell him. Robert said, tell him something they don't know. So Brent was always a jokester. He was always into the police force. He was all about the law. And in high school, we used to get together. We'd go out to a field and quote. Sorry. So in high school, we'd all be out at. Oh, I'm good. We'd all be out at a field, and all the trucks backed up, cars backed up, goofing off, being high school kids. Of course, there was nothing illegal there. And all of a sudden, down the dirt road comes this car with lights like the truck back there. At least 30, 40 miles an hour down the dirt road. So what do a bunch of high school kids, 30 to 50 in number, do? Scatter. Run. Everyone took off. Car comes sliding in. Who is it? It's my 17-year-old brother with a fake light that he put on the dash of his car. So that started really early. That night, I became his hero and defender when 6 football players wanted to tear his head off because he ran through a barbed wire fence. So there's 2 things I'll say about Shelly. One, I had a hope, and I reached out to a person named Peggy Crispin. And Peggy Crispin was camping at Lake Carl Blackwell that night. She was a first responder. Just by the chance that there's a nurse. That's one of the first ones on the scene. Cared for Shelly until she was life flighted out. And I was hoping that you could have met her. But she unfortunately wasn't able to make it. She had just recently had surgery. But even to her, I had a hope that I'd get to hug her and tell her thank you. The last thing is, I've stayed in touch with Shelly. My kids know Shelly. They've spoken to Shelly throughout school. They've written papers about drunk driving. And you've been a blessing and an inspiration just to watch you through social media and see those things happen. So I've taken too long.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, Steve, I'm gonna make it, or Rose, I'm gonna make it to where you're gonna not have to worry about it because I'm gonna mess this up. You guys, this is so emotional, and I'm struggling with this, so I brought my paper in case I forget. But I am so honored to be a part of this and to be able to speak at this dedication. This is huge. And in fact, Brian mentioned to me today that makes it even bigger. He said, you know, when all this happened, you were in the hospital. You didn't get to go to the funeral. You didn't get to go to anything that was official and to where you got to see and close a book and do anything. And this is kind of my first time to have an official, to see how amazing everybody gets together and does something so wonderful. So thank you for allowing me to have that memory and that closure and that be able to pull with me. I want to extend a thank you to all of the officers. They've continued to count me as part of the family, which is pretty amazing since I was just the GF. But even after, while I was still on campus, they left notes on my car like Brent used to. They checked in on me. They made sure I was okay. And yes, I got stopped several times, but it was because I was DD and I was driving everybody else. They were like, you've got too many people. Oh, Shelly, that's you. Okay, go on. Get these people home. And so it was awesome. And I appreciate that. I appreciate his family that opened their hearts to me and his friends that allowed me to continue to be a part. These relationships helped me immensely through my recovery process, and I will cherish these relationships forever. I want to share a few giving moments that helps us to remember that Brent is still making a difference. And some of these things have been mentioned, but I'm going to say them again because they're on my paper, and if I get off, then I won't get back. I'll ramble. But I want to say that for 25 years, these officers and the lake staff moved that cross that my dad and I made. And yes, it was just a small cross. I wasn't sure what would be allowed, and I did it without asking. Paula likes that. But I put it there, and every week for mowing, they moved it. And how amazing is that? Then this Sweet Lake family sees this cross in deterioration and made and donated a permanent one. This is awesome. And then we have the lake staff that have made this drive so that way when people want to see what it is, to pay their respects, they can do it safely. And this is amazing, all for something that happened 27 years ago. And then Chief Altman had got Sergeant Storm to put together a video and a drunk driving PowerPoint so that way it could be an education to be able to keep telling the story. And Leah, as I call her, Sergeant Storm, she worked with her heart and she made it look so easy. But she called out to us, she reached out to family, to friends, she got all of the memorials, she put it all together, she interviewed with Smokey Salas. Everybody put all this together, made this look easy. And it's so amazing. And this is something I'm going to carry with me forever. And I thank you guys. But I know I'm supposed to say something about personal, maybe about Brent. So this is what I'm going to say. For those of you who knew Brent, and for those of you that have heard stories, and we've talked about it, he was mischievous, he was always telling jokes, but I'll tell you, he always answered the call. He had a tremendous heart, and he had a passion for helping people. That was one of the reasons why he became an officer. But when we talked about, what are you going to do with that? Are you always going to be an OSU officer? What's going to happen? And he would be like, what are you going to do with your degree? I mean, are you going to help people? We're doing the same thing. And unanimously, this is what he always said. And I'm going to read it so I don't mess it up. He said, I just want to make a difference. I just want people to know who I am, to know what I stand for, and when they walk away, I want them to remember me. And so I look around, and 27 years later, we're all standing here, and it looks like he's remembered. It looks like he's still making a difference. And with this memorial, he's going to continue to touch people's lives, and he's going to continue to make a difference. And because of all of you, we're making everything that he worked for. Hold on, I just lost his making a difference, and his remembering what he stood for, it's accomplished. He's made it, and he's going to continue to do that through all of our hearts and all of our stories. And I appreciate you guys for letting me be a part of it. Thank you. And what do I call you? I just know you as Steve. Is it Trooper Burrows? Okay, Trooper Burrows, I'm sorry.
Well, that's two that's tough to follow, and I'm not entirely certain that I'm up for that. I'll give it what I got. First, I'd like to thank Chief Jones and Leah, wherever she is. Thank you. And to your efforts and to all the efforts for all the people that worked hard to make this memorial a reality. So, when Leah asked me to say a few words today, I'll be honest, I debated for 2 weeks what to say. I had no clue. I thought, well, maybe I'll tell some stories about Brent. Maybe a memory, a tall tale. There were enough of those. Then I thought, maybe I will use these few minutes to talk about drunk driving. The victims of crashes, having to go knock on someone's door and tell them that their loved one's dead. The long-term consequences of one bad choice. We are all here because of someone's very bad choice. We're dedicating this memorial as a consequence to that bad choice. Then I thought of my friend. And you're right, I will not make it through this. For those of you who knew Brent, there is very little that I can add that you don't know or don't remember. I see some of the smiles from some of the people that didn't know, so you know what I'm talking about. For those of you that don't know Brent, I can honestly say it is very unfortunate. Brent wasn't a saint, nor did he want to be. But what he was was a loyal, honest, hardworking, fun-loving guy who attacked each day with gusto and a zest for life that made you want to emulate it. It made you a better person because being around Brent, he wanted to be a better person. Brent always sought to master whatever he chose to do, whether it be a friend, whether it be a police officer, riding a bike, shooting a pistol, whatever it was, he was going to master it. But look at me. Whatever it was, he was going to be the best he could be at it. And as Shelley said, Brent loved law enforcement. And not surprising, he was good at it. He knew the law. His uniforms were absolutely perfect. His shoes, spotless. He had this ability to talk to people that instantly conveyed trustworthiness and professionalism. Something that I have struggled for in 30 years. It came natural to him. Whatever he was going to do, he was going to be the best. We would occasionally talk about our futures, what our career paths might take, what we might end up doing. Well, I ended up doing what I wanted to do. And it might surprise you that Brent frequently talked about the U.S. Marshal Service. And he loved the idea of being a deputy marshal. Now, the extraordinary thing about that is he would have excelled at that too, just like he did here. Over the years, I recounted the story of May 14th, 1992, hundreds of times. At training, at victim witness panels, at schools. But I personally never dealt with that night. I locked it away. It happened. I locked it away. I refused to deal with it. It wasn't until Smokey wanted my participation in this PSA that I was forced to unlock that and deal with some long buried memories. At all the times I've told this story, there would be questions. Who, what, where, how. There would be specific questions about the physics of the crash. Troopers can't do anything without a diagram, so they'd want to know, how did it happen, which way did it go, what formulas did you use, and such like that. There were questions regarding the driver. But it wasn't until Smokey asked me how I felt, 27 years later, that it finally hit me. There are always questions. How did this happen? Why did this happen? Questions that have no answers. What we're left with is trying to comprehend and trying to make some sense of it all. In a senseless act, there is no sense. We're still grasping for that. But in the end, I feel exactly as I did 27 years ago today. I just miss my friend. I just miss my friend.
Would anyone else like to speak? Probably use a joke, not now. Oh, thank you very much. At this time, Brian is going to place a wreath above the bronze plaque. Good luck. with Sergeant Storm's assistance.